What if the man who once saved Napoleon's life ended up building his own throne from frozen mud in a desperate breakdown? The chilling winds of Europe in the early 19th century carried whispers of an empire in turmoil, led by a man whose name would become synonymous with ambition and power, Napoleon Bonaparte. But within his ranks, among the glory and honor, there existed a shadowed reality. It was in the depths of this darkness that a peculiar figure stood, General Jean-Andoche Junot. A trusted friend of Napoleon, Junot had earned his place not through bloodline, but through valor and cunning. His rise from commoner to a general was a testament to the meritocratic ideals of the time. Yet, beneath the gleaming exterior of a decorated officer, something far darker was beginning to fester, unnoticed by most. The battlefield was not the only place where battles raged. There was a war within Junot's mind, one that no one could see coming. It was 1812, and the French Grande Armée had reached the Russian front. The landscape was an unforgiving expanse of snow, barren and cold. As Napoleon's forces advanced, the men were already beginning to feel the psychological toll of war. But none more so than General Junot, who had already been battling not only the harsh Russian winter, but an insidious enemy within his own body. Syphilis had ravaged his health, leaving him frail and weary. His once steely resolve was beginning to crumble, much like the snow-covered landscape around him. The icy wind cut through the ranks as whispers spread among the soldiers. Junot, the man who had once saved Napoleon's life, was slipping into a madness that no one could fully comprehend. On the night of October 19th, as the French army prepared to retreat from Moscow, a bizarre and unsettling event occurred. In the midst of the frozen wasteland, a figure was seen toiling under the moonlight, his breath visible in the biting cold. It was General Junot, his mind clouded by fever and delusion. His hands, trembling with the weight of his insanity, began to gather frozen mud and debris from the battlefield. In a fevered stupor, he attempted to craft something grand, something regal. It was a throne, but not just any throne. This was a throne born from the very earth and ice that threatened to bury them all. His soldiers watched in horror and disbelief, unable to intervene, as Junot continued his work. The man who had once stood at the pinnacle of military achievement was now building a monument to his own fractured mind. The scene was surreal, a grotesque tableau amidst the brutal reality of war. Junot, once the embodiment of strength and resolve, now appeared as a man unraveling before their eyes. His once proud uniform, now soiled and ragged, clung to his emaciated frame as he worked tirelessly, seemingly oblivious to the cold and the chaos surrounding him. His soldiers stood at a distance, too afraid to intervene, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. Junot's delusions had taken hold. He began to speak aloud to the imagined spirits of his fallen comrades, commanding them as if they were still there, on the battlefield beside him. The emperor's closest confidant was no longer a general of men, but a king of ghosts, his empire reduced to the fragile walls of a throne made of ice and mud. As the days wore on, the retreat from Moscow became a desperate scramble for survival. The weather grew colder, and the men of the Grande Armée began to fall apart, physically and mentally. Junot's mind, however, had already crossed into a realm of madness from which there was no return. In private memoirs, officers like Marbot would recount seeing Junot in the depths of his breakdown, his mind a tangled mess of fragmented thoughts. He would mutter about ghosts, about battles long lost, and about the glory that had once been his. His descent into madness was not just the result of his physical ailments, but a product of the brutal war he had been a part of, a war that had taken everything from him, including his sanity. The general who once stood at Napoleon's side, invincible in the eyes of his men, was now nothing more than a tragic figure, lost to the horrors of war and the fragility of the human mind. The freezing winds of Russia seemed to mirror the coldness that had overtaken Junot's mind. The retreat was in full swing, and every day seemed to stretch endlessly as Napoleon's once proud army limped away from the ruins of Moscow. Junot, however, was no longer fully part of the army. His physical presence remained, but his mind had become a mere shadow of its former brilliance. His thoughts became fractured, slipping between lucid moments and fevered delirium. In his rare moments of clarity, Junot would sit quietly, staring at the icy landscape as if searching for something only he could see. Yet, when the delirium returned, he was a man possessed. His eyes would widen, his face contorted with a madness that frightened even his most loyal officers. They had seen his strength, his resilience on the battlefield, but now they saw only a ghost, a shell of a man lost in his own haunted world. On one fateful night, as the soldiers huddled together for warmth, Junot wandered away from the camp. His officers, too fearful to stop him, allowed him to disappear into the desolate Russian night. It wasn't long before he was found again, in the most peculiar of places, at the edge of a frozen river, standing tall in the middle of the icy landscape, his hands raised to the sky as if summoning an invisible army. His breath formed clouds in the frigid air, but there was no sound, only the eerie silence of a man who had lost all sense of reality. His men approached cautiously, unsure of what to do. It was clear to them that Junot had crossed the line between man and myth, between general and mad king. He was no longer the man who had once stood proudly at Napoleon's side. Now, he was a figure of tragic mystery, a living legend undone by his own mind. The retreat continued, but with every passing day, Junot's decline became more apparent. His once commanding presence was now replaced by erratic behavior and bouts of incoherence. Officers would recall moments when he would stand still for hours, staring into nothingness, lost in a world of his own making. At other times, he would rage against the sky, as if challenging the very forces that had led to his undoing. His men began to murmur among themselves, speaking of the madness that had taken root in their general's soul. Junot, however, seemed entirely unaware of the growing concern around him. His focus was on something far beyond the battlefield. He was a man obsessed with reclaiming his glory, with commanding an army that only existed in his mind. The Grande Army had been reduced to shadows of its former self, and Junot was no exception. His mind, once sharp and calculating, was now a battlefield in its own right. By November, the once proud General Junot had become a haunting figure within the Grande Army. His officers spoke in hushed tones, fearing the wrath of their commander's mental state. Yet, despite his instability, Junot's position remained largely intact, a testament to the power of his previous deeds and Napoleon's loyalty to his old friend. But even that loyalty would soon prove insufficient. In the stillness of a winter night, after a long and grueling march, Junot was found in his quarters, surrounded by papers he could no longer make sense of. His hands trembled as he scribbled incoherent thoughts onto the pages. He muttered about victory, about battles yet to be fought, but the words were empty, meaningless. His mind had slipped beyond any hope of recovery, and his body, too, was failing him. His officers, unable to deny the depth of his madness any longer, looked on with helpless eyes, knowing that their general, their friend, was lost. On December 2nd, 1812, as Napoleon's army staggered out of Russia, General Junot's mental and physical collapse reached its tragic peak. The once proud general, who had played a crucial role in Napoleon's rise to power, was now a shell of his former self. His body was frail, his face gaunt, and his mind consumed by the horrors of the campaign. Yet, despite his visible decay, he remained a man of considerable influence, his reputation as a loyal servant of Napoleon still holding sway among the soldiers. However, it became increasingly clear that Junot could no longer carry the weight of his own history. He had witnessed too much, endured too much, and in the end, it was his own mind that betrayed him. His final days were spent in a delirious haze, as he relived past glories and past traumas, unable to distinguish between them. The man who had once saved Napoleon's life was now a tragic reminder of the brutal cost of war and the fragile nature of the human mind. As winter's grip tightened, the Grande Army's retreat seemed like a slow, inevitable march toward doom. Yet, amid this devastation, Junot's descent continued to spiral into darkness. The officers, once so fiercely loyal to him, now whispered behind closed doors, speaking of the tragedies he had witnessed and the toll it had taken on his mind. Junot, once so brilliant in battle, had become a ghost wandering the frozen wasteland, his thoughts scattered like the snowflakes that fell endlessly from the sky. There were moments when he would call out in the dead of night, his voice trembling with the strain of delirium, speaking of victories that never were and enemies that had long since fallen. His soldiers could only watch in quiet despair as their leader, once a towering figure, was consumed by his own tortured mind. The retreat, now a desperate attempt to escape both the physical and psychological battlefield, had become a grotesque march towards Junot's inevitable demise. In the weeks that followed, Junot's behavior grew more erratic. His officers began to fear for their own safety, unsure if the general's madness might lead to unpredictable actions. On one fateful evening, as the army camped near a small village, Junot disappeared once again into the frigid landscape, his figure barely visible against the white expanse. His absence sparked panic, and soldiers searched through the night for their lost commander. When they finally found him, he was kneeling at the edge of a frozen lake, staring at his reflection in the icy waters. His face, gaunt and hollow, mirrored the broken man he had become. Junot muttered to himself, speaking of a future that no longer existed, of battles that had no meaning. He spoke of a throne that was not made of ice, but of glory, one that he had once believed he was destined to sit upon. But the only throne now was the one he had built from the frozen mud, an empire crumbling from within. As December drew to a close, General Junot's condition reached its breaking point. His body, ravaged by the cold and disease, could no longer support the weight of his mind. His once commanding presence had shriveled into something barely recognizable. His officers, deeply troubled, gathered together to discuss the fate of their broken general, but even they were unsure how to proceed. Junot was no longer fit to lead. His breakdown was no longer a secret. Rumors began to spread throughout the army that he had lost the will to fight, that he was no longer the man who had once defied death on the battlefield. His soldiers had seen the transformation. The man who had once commanded with unyielding strength was now a husk, his mind a labyrinth of shattered memories and delusions. Yet, Napoleon, the emperor who had once trusted Junot above all others, did not abandon him. He chose instead to offer his friend a chance for recovery, but it was a hope that came too late, for Junot was already beyond saving. By early 1813, General Junot had been sent to recover in a remote estate far from the front lines. But the healing he sought never came. In the solitude of his isolation, Junot's mind fractured even further. His memories of past glory were distorted, his connection to reality completely severed. There, in the cold quiet of his estate, the man who had once been the embodiment of Napoleon's vision of meritocracy and military brilliance was left to wither. He had become a shadow of himself, a living reminder of the fragility of the human spirit in the face of war's brutality. The officers who had once revered him now could only speak of the tragedy of his fall. And it was in this bleak environment, surrounded by the ghosts of his former victories, that Junot made his final choice. His end came not on a battlefield, but in the seclusion of his own despair. Alone, broken, and forgotten, he took his life, an unfortunate conclusion to a once promising legacy. The death of General Jean-Andoche Junot in early 1813 was a silent, mournful end to a life once filled with purpose and glory. The world would continue to turn, and Napoleon's empire would crumble under the weight of time. But for those who had known Junot, his death was a haunting reminder of the true cost of war. The once great general, who had risen from nothing to become one of Napoleon's closest allies, had been consumed by the very thing that had propelled him to greatness. His story was one of brilliance and madness intertwined, a tragic narrative that was often overlooked in the official histories of the Napoleonic Wars. For those who had served under him, the memory of Junot would remain, a man who, in his final moments, had been both a commander of men and a prisoner of his own mind. His fall from grace was a reminder that the minds of the greatest warriors could be fragile, and the toll of war could take more than just life. It could take the very soul of a man.